Well, I want to welcome you to today's episode of our podcast. Excited about the new direction that God is leading us in as we've changed really over new direction, new title, and everything to taking your next step. Now, in our previous episodes, we really laid a foundation of why we're, changing direction. We began to lay the foundation that Jesus gives us this invitation numerous times in the New Testament to follow me. And so that's the goal, really, of this podcast is we'll journey together to be more like him. In order to do that, it's really to follow him. It's us taking our next step. So in our today's episode, we want to look at this thought of what's holding you back. And we'll look at that today and also on Thursday and begin to identify maybe some areas of our life that are hindering or causing us not to be able to take that next step in our walk with Jesus Christ. Now, have you ever been out in the woods? I love being in the woods. I love hiking through, just exploring. I love hunting. And sometimes when you get out in the woods, some of it's kind of open, but then you get into some thick brush or thick covering. And as you go through, you sometimes are caught up with those famous briars. You begin to get in and they begin to snag your pants, maybe your shirt. The more you move and the more you try to advance forward, the deeper those vines and briars begin to dig into your clothes, and ultimately they begin to dig into your skin. They begin to hurt. And sometimes when you're trying to get them off of you, they begin to claw into your hands, and it just becomes a mess. And I enjoy hunting, and sometimes you got to track a deer, and you go into the woods, and you're excited, and next thing you know, you run into briars, and you're all caught up, and they're just all over you, and they begin to hold you back. And every effort that you use to move forward causes pain or causes more briars to attach, and it keeps you from moving forward. Remember the invitation that Jesus gave us, that was to follow me. So maybe you have been wanting to take your next step in following Jesus, but you just can't quite seem to take that next step. There seems to be something holding you back. Maybe you like those briars, they kind of, all of a sudden, something attaches on you and begins to hold you back. Maybe there's something in your life that is keeping you from taking that next step. Now, it could be something that you are aware of, something that you can identify, but maybe you're just having trouble removing whatever it is that's holding you back. Maybe you can't identify it. Maybe you just can't put your finger on it. Sometimes that's me. I know something's hindering, something's holding me back because I truly want to advance, want to go forward with Jesus, but something's holding me back, and I just can't put my finger on it. You see, in order to take the next step in our relationship with Jesus Christ, we will have to identify whatever it is that's keeping us from taking the next step. We'll have to identify whatever it is that's hindering us or holding us back, and we're going to have to work very intentionally in removing it. The book of Mark, Jesus gave a parable. It's a very familiar parable about the sower. And this sower goes out and he begins to sow seed on different types of ground. And Jesus makes application to the seed being the word of God, the sower being the believer who's spreading the message of the gospel. And the soil is different types of people, or the way people will react to the truth. In verse number 7, he said this, "And some fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked it and yielded no fruit." And then he begins to explain or expound what he means by that in verse 18 and 19. The Bible goes on to say this, "And these are they which are sown among thorns, such as hear the word, and the cares of this world, and the deceitfulness of riches, and the lust of other things, entering in, choke the word, and it becometh unfruitful." And so as we think about what's holding you back, I think one of the biggest aspects is what Jesus is referring to here, the cares of this world. Really, one of the biggest hindrances is this: distractions. And I'm not talking about bad distractions. This episode is going to focus on actually good things. Good things that can take the replacement for the best. And we have to be careful with that. We have to be careful to prioritize the best over the good. We have to be careful not to exchange the good for the best, right? So as we think about something that would hold us back, those briars as we're walking through the woods, basically we're narrowing in on the cares of this world being distractions. The first distraction that we'll consider is this: the busyness of life. Now, when I'm talking about the busyness of life, I'm talking about work. I'm talking about school. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about activities that you have to do. I'm talking about goals, dreams. And as I'm mentioning these, none of these are bad. And each are necessary to life, honestly. but each can distract us from being able to take the next step in our relationship or in our walk with Jesus Christ. You see, each of these can become the priority. Each of these can become what we feel is best when it's really good and it's not the best. And we can mess up by focusing all our attention on that which clouds out other aspects in our life. And so we're left with not quite enough energy, not quite enough tension to take the next step because we're giving so much time, so much energy to these other things, and they're good, they're right, they're needful in life. But because of the energy we're expending there, we don't quite have the energy to give, to take that next step in our walk with Jesus Christ. We end up settling for second best. We settle for less than what God really wants for our lives. So what do? We have to do this. We have to prioritize according to the importance. For some of us, that means just simply shifting the focus because we're already desiring to be a follower of Jesus Christ, but other things, distractions, other important things in life, work, relationships, family, these have begun to crowd in. And because they've crowded in, we're hindered in taking that next step. So we need to prioritize. We still need to do these things because they're good, but we need to make sure they're in the right order. And we need to make sure our walk with Jesus Christ, our effort to take that next step is first and foremost. For others of us, it means taking some sort of intentional time. We need to separate the time we're given to these elements and not allow them to be distractions, but instead make intentional time for the steps we need to take to be a true follower of Jesus Christ. For others, it may be a complete lifestyle change. Maybe you're like, whoa, a follower of Jesus Christ, that's kind of radical. That's different from maybe what I've been doing. I've just been kind of going through the motions. I've been doing what I think a Christian should do, but as I begin to see the invitation to follow Jesus, wow, that's really a lifestyle change. And so maybe that's where you're at. You're really going to need to make some changes in the way you live and the way your lifestyle is. But regardless, you're going to have to be intentional to set your priorities in order. Nothing happens by accident. You know, if we fail to plan, then we plan to fail. Benjamin Franklin said that many, many years ago, but how true it is. I think about on a weekly basis, if I don't schedule it, honestly, it can very easily not get done. Now, I don't want to live by a rigid calendar, but I have to schedule time. I have to schedule what is important to me. And if it's important, I will schedule it. It will happen. And then I can see the goal or whatever it is being accomplished. So as we think about what's holding you back, we're looking at distractions. And some of those distractions may be the busyness of life. Or a second distraction we would consider is this: voices that scream for our attention. Now, every day there are voices all over, and they're screaming for you and I to listen. We have all the digital devices and all the digital content that comes through on those devices. Now, again, none of these are bad. I use an iPhone, I use an iPad, I use a computer, I use things to help me work, and none of these are bad. But at the same time, they can be tools for good, or they can be tools that can be used to cause distractions or hindrances really to what's most important in my life. And so social media, news, advertisements, TV shows, blogs, internet searches, I'm searching for content, podcasts, you're listening to one, right? But even podcasts can become a voice screaming for our attention. So we need to make sure the content is right and is going in the direction we want our life to go in. YouTube videos, I mean, the amount of time that's spent looking at that as entertainment. Again, nothing's wrong with it. But when it takes the place of the best, then yes, we do have a problem. It becomes a distraction in our life. And you know, what's really interesting to me is we work with college-age young people, young adults, both college and career. I hear many of them keep saying this: put down the device, get off social media just for a little bit. I think they see the distraction. I think they see the temptation that's there. We know it's not wrong, but many times it begins to fill areas and time of our life that we could expend elsewhere. And honestly, that age stage of 18 to 22 is a stage of life that can be really devoted to being a true follower of Jesus Christ. It's an age stage you can never get back, and it's an opportunity that God gives there to where there's not certain cares of family, of children, and so forth, that you can really give that time to the Lord and being a true follower of Him. So it's very interesting to me that I hear that with the younger age group, just saying, hey, take a time off, just put it down for a little bit, then come back if need be. As we think about the voices screaming for our attention, we're also thinking about the physical people and the physical voices, family, friends, relationships, classmates, teachers, all that. They're all voices that are screaming for our attention. Again, none of them are wrong, but they can be distractions. And we need that attention many times because we're relational beings. But bottom line is we have multiple voices crying out to us many times throughout the day. And the combination of them can leave no room for this, for God's voice. No room to know when and where to take the next step in our walk. So we settle for where we are. And that's the problem. We allow the distractions to take first course. We allow the distractions to be priority. And so again, none of these are bad until they begin to distract us from what is best. They begin hindering us from taking that next step with Jesus Christ. And I can think about things in my life that are hindering, they're distractions. And so as we close out this podcast, what is it in your life that is a distraction? It's not bad. It doesn't mean that you're evil, you're sinful doing it, but you know that it's become consuming. You know it's become a distraction, and it's that one thing, honestly, that you need to get rid of in order for you to begin to take that next step. So take a moment and ask God to reveal to you what distractions are in the way. Maybe you already know. Maybe you just need to seek God to help you to remove it. So ask God to reveal it, but also ask God to help you to remove it. But remember, you and I have a part. We don't just ask God to remove it and just pray it disappears. You and I have to be intentional in removing it.